And what we have to accept is that the reason why we have these laws and the reason why we have the police is because we're trying to contour human behavior on a societal level, right? We want a certain outcome for all of humans, and we want to limit the outliers. But what we can figure out though is that much of that governance happens through self-determination, and it happens on a very, very local level. So for instance, your community can decide what problems are necessary for fighting within that specific community. For instance, if your community doesn't feel like they have a huge drug problem, if your community doesn't feel like they have a huge crime element, right, then there really doesn't need to be the infusion of police officers in that area occupying the streets. Because whenever they do that, they create an environment to which hostilities can occur. That's where you have originally peaceful places turn into violent outcomes. And quite honestly, whenever police officers interact with the person, in that moment they are infringing upon that person's civil liberties and rights. Just speaking to them. Right? That's why you have the ability to be able to refuse a question from an officer, because at that moment they're literally infringing upon your rights. Anything you say and do can be used against you. So your First Amendment is being infringed upon, right? So we have to accept that, and the way that we combat it is by setting up multiple factions. It's a sort of anarcho-syndicalism beliefs, right? So we set up multiple factions of federations to where those federations are governing themselves, using private security, using the market essentially, and you can set that up yourself. You can set that up with your friends and your friends' friends, and all of you can come together in a community with your local HOA, start a private security firm, and that private security firm adheres to the laws of the land, and they enforce the laws of the land in that area based on an as-needed basis. And not with the military force, but with people that they identify with in their community. So there's less opportunity for miscommunication. There's less opportunity for instances where, police just or people get anxiety and then they just harm each other as a consequence.
And one of the reasons I like what I hear when we talk about this, Emmanuel and I, because I was listening to NPR this past week and they were talking about the race issues in this country and police issues. And they were talking to a police trainer. And the police trainer was saying that on average, it depends on the state, that cops get about 120 hours of lethal force training, right? But he said when it comes to de-escalation tactics, they get on average maybe 8 hours of training. How much training does a person or a private security firm issue to the people working for them on average for de-escalation?
24 hours unarmed training. To begin, you have 24 hours.
24 hours
on training. That's not including whatever the company that hires you will have as your.
So think about that. This is a reason why I think it's important to hear this, because I think sometimes, like if you look at our other videos, I encourage you to watch them all. We talked about the lesser two evils when it comes to voting for the presidential candidates. Sometimes people think there's only two options, so they're forced into this fake choice. When it comes to police, we think the only choice is, something bad happens, we need more police. And one of the reasons I think it's so important to hear what Emmanuel is saying is that you need to know, no, there's other ways that we can address this. So if you have a private security firm in your community that has 3 times the training in de-escalation tactics than the police do, and something's going on, and you know that this kid is a good kid, let's just use an example. The kid's a good kid, but the kid has kind of gone a little sideways, and you know that the kid is good and got a good heart, but just is following the wrong crowd. You don't want the kid shot when the police get there, because the police, we're seeing more and more cases, Laquan McDonald, Tamir Rice, that they get there and it's Dylan Noble, it's shoot first, cover up later. It's not even questions because they're dead. It's just shoot first, lie on the police report, cover up later, hide the video so that you can get reelected for mayoral office. Rahm Emanuel, Chicago. You may want somebody who's going to go there and who's going to say, hey, let me try to de-escalate this. And then if we can't de-escalate it, then we'll bring in force. A good example of this is Rise Up Georgia has a program that they're pushing called Dots Not Glocks. And they're trying to get it where if somebody has a mental health issue, that police aren't arriving on site and killing them like they did with Anthony Hill in Georgia. He was unarmed, he was naked, having a bipolar episode, may have been his first episode, and police killed him. What if there had been a private security firm there to de-escalate? What if there had been doctors trained in mental health to be able to de-escalate the situation and get that person help? You may be thinking like that'd be nice. It's not just that would be nice. We're in America. We can afford all these different things. We could put $1 trillion into a war in Iraq that we were lied to about, that we were lied into. We know we were lied into it. We know it. And we spent $1 trillion on that. But then people want to tell me we can't afford college education. We can't forgive people's loans. We can't afford to fix the environment. We can't fix police problems. We can do things that nobody agrees with, but we can't do things that the people want.
Yeah, that help our communities. And that's essentially what you would do. And so, I challenge conservatives on this, right? Because they're all about the free market. And this is a laissez-faire principle, where you're trying to get the government out of the market in this particular case. Or at the very least, you're divesting government in this case. I'm saying you need to divest, you need to correct, and you need to replace the police state. And you divest the police resources into other avenues, into other allocations. You allocate it into public health. You allocate those resources into educational facilities. You allocate those resources into more opportunities for people to grow and develop. And you also allocate those resources to charters that people will have available to them if they want to start up their own security firm. Mm-hmm. And then you correct the mentality of the police officers as well as their usage. Because when you divest those resources, guess what? They're not going to have as many officers out on patrol. In fact, they're going to have to bring them back. They're going to have to go on a more of an on-call basis, which is what we want them for. We don't really want them occupying our streets, right? Like the military. We want them to be on call. I
don't mean to cut you off. I'm glad you said that. There's a great example that you gave about the fire department and what were you saying about that?
If I want a fire, if I have a fire, I call the fire department. If someone's having an heart attack, I call the EMS. If I want someone to get protected from getting choked out in the street, then I call the police officers to come. But only then. So I only want them to show up when they show up. They have a hard job to do, and I'm not discrediting them.
Yes,
right. I'm saying that's saying if you have a hard job to do, let's make sure that you're using that job or you're doing that job at the most appropriate times. Right? You're not doing it exorbitantly and leading to high tensions within the communities, and then of course having having diminishing returns.
And on top of that, if you're one who wants to protect the lives of police officers, if anything, this should sound like a pretty decent idea, because what this would do is the community would have more say and power to deal with its own issues, and only when things get really bad do the police show up. So that's less opportunities for police to be in harm's way. And if you think about when we say that we are in a democracy, which again, I'm not sure that we are, but we say that we are, we talk about our government being of the people, by the people, and for the people. Well, what is this but a people solution? This is people saying we want to take charge of our own neighborhoods and we want to make sure that they're safe. Now, there's some of you who will watch this and you'll say, Daniel, that's the whole point of voting in your local elections. Why aren't you encouraging people to vote for the sheriffs, know who their police are, go to the meetings, go to the local council meetings? You're right. We should do that as well. I'm one who believes we should have a full-bodied strategy when we're dealing with injustices and we're dealing with issues. Yeah. So I agree with that. However, there are some communities that believe that the police cannot be trusted at all. There are some precincts and departments that are just full of bad apples. And at that point, sometimes you have to throw out the bunch. And you have to bring in a new batch. They're like in Florida, I remember reading a story about how the police would sick dogs on people. And they would play games to see how often did their dogs bite people. And that was in the news a couple months ago. Like, that's just one example. All police shouldn't be judged by that. But there are precincts where there are bad apples, and police in the precincts are trying to do something, and their voices aren't being heard. So if there's a situation where your police department is corrupt, and you, no matter what you do, like, not only is the police department corrupt, but then they have special relationships with the prosecutors and the district attorney. So if they do something wrong, they're friends, so nobody's going to bring anything against them. The judge used to be a plaintiff attorney, so they have a relationship with them. Like, just like on Law and Order, they all knew each other. Like, if you have a scenario like that, and that's real, and you don't feel like there's going to be any justice, then you've got to look at another measure. I'm not one who tells people you just have to accept things as they are. We're not those people. If you want that kind of show, you got to go somewhere else. We say, hey, what are all the options on the table? And if you don't feel like you can trust the police at all, if you don't think there's anything that can be done to salvage that relationship between the community and police, then this is something to take a hard look at, to say, how can we build this in our own community so that we can protect ourselves, protect the police, and keep the necessary distance between us and the police until we need them, so that we keep their lives safe, we keep our lives safe, and we feel like we have our freedoms in the process.
Yeah. It's all about protecting freedom and liberty. If you don't feel as though that you're living life without, someone looming over your shoulder, then you're not actually living life. You're a slave.
Yeah.
So, this is Bothersome Truth.
That's been our videos. I hope you enjoy them. If you like what we're doing, share, subscribe. Share it with a friend. Leave comments. We try to get back to you. And we love constructive criticism. We love feedback. That way it makes every video better. And tell a friend.
Tell a friend. Please debate me on the issues. I want to see you in the comment box. I got you.
Yes, because I like to debate too. Ask my mom. So that's been this episode of Bothersome Truth.